So, independent platforms are dying, are they? We're going to talk about platform freedom on this episode. Freedom is a word that can be used to describe two way different states of existence. One is what we want, a dynamic environment that has a rich variety of individuals, groups, organizations, where there's a high potential for exchange and mobility. So it's not just that everyone's free to do what they want. You're free to actually change your standing, your position. It's based on free association and then also a fluidity of motion. So you could deal with who you want to deal with. It's easy to deal with people. There are not a lot of obstacles or things standing in the way for people to do business with each other. And ultimately, your standing is merit-based. You're rewarded based on what you do, who you are, what you act like. That's the first kind of freedom. The other kind of freedom is you get this unregulated system where you still have invisible controls, all these controls that are actually going to centralize resources and consolidate power toward a select few. So it's not based on merit, but it's based on influences, based on connections, who you know. This would be like an unregulated corporatism, the kind that we kind of have today, right, in America and in the world. So we want the first, but we get the second. We want that dynamic, free environment, but we get unregulated tyranny. So anyway, this is This Week in Tyranny. It's episode 165. Today is February 3rd, 2026. This weekend was my birthday. Yesterday was my birthday. So I really have that context as well of turning 30 and looking back on my life and how things have changed. And in the same way, I'm going to look back on what I've observed while being on this earth. Also, I'm doing this about independent platforms, so in that vibe of the old school YouTube where a guy could just turn the camera on himself and people would listen to him if he has something to say. I don't even have my little table, my columns, and no production here. So it's an old school kind of video. It's a throwback, and you'll see why. Last week I wanted to talk about the YouTube algorithm and how it was oppressive in itself, right? I kind of had that idea, but I decided against it. I wanted to talk about the new algorithms and how it actually reveals and foreshadows a societal decline, like the war against the algorithms and the war against AI. I ended up not doing it because I didn't think it was compelling enough. There was another story that I wanted to talk about, but it merges and overlaps with this subject. So it turns out this week I'm basically doing it after all, because this is about independent platforms dying out. So, and I want to show you a video of somebody that I've shown you his videos here before, somebody I really like and respect, Rossman, and this is his video, Google is killing authentic websites and I made it worse. This is very recent. I'm just going to play a couple minutes of it. I don't know if I'll pause during it or not, but hopefully the audio is all right. Just some background, because I'm not playing it from the beginning. He has a repair company, a very good one, right? He's good at what he does, and he really believes in principles of freedom, and he's up against the system that has a lot of loopholes and bullshit and is charging people more money. And he actually had his website delisted from Google recently, and he talks about how AI is at fault for this, so I'll let you hear it.
Like working repairs. I need to have a Google ranking. So I do everything that I can to try and fix this problem. I work on making my website better. I work on making new pages, things like that. Nothing works. I hire an SEO person to give me some pointers. Nothing works. I try hiring a content writer to rewrite some of the page ideas that I had. Nothing works. I go to the person who has done all this excellent web design for me in the past and said, listen, I have a WordPress site that's 16 years old. Let's make something new in Next.js, new framework. Let's just crash all this crap and start from scratch and do something good from the ground up that's proper. And I pay a proper price for it. Nothing works. I spend a year racking my head on this as much as I can, and I get nowhere. I look at I use an SEO check thing, and I would also Google myself for a bunch of different search terms, and I'm not in the first 100 results. And then I asked Gemini. Gemini is an AI made by Google. maybe it knows what's wrong here. And I ask it, and I get results that start to freak me out because it starts telling me that the very language that I use on my website is language that maybe I shouldn't be using. Maybe it's a language that may come off the way that it's not supposed to. But this is the language that I've been using the entire time. I'm like, this is weird. Maybe instead of "do you really need a clean room," you should write something that says stuff like "validation over optics." And it gives me ideas on how I can reword things so that it sounds completely sterile. And I do that. And then my search engine ranking goes from not in the first 100 to 20-something to 17 to like 10 or something to 9, 6. It is like within weeks. And this wasn't one change. I implemented a bunch of changes. But the thing I noticed, the changes that worked weren't necessarily code changes. It was changes to the way that I talk. It was changes to the way that I speak. I kept doing it and I kept working on it because I saw, this worked a little bit. Okay, let me ask it to reword this page. And I go from 17 to 16. Reword this page, go from 16 to 10. Reword this page, go from 10 to 9. Go reword this page, go from 9 to 6. And I look at my site and I read my business website where I have for 16 fucking years valued being transparent with my customer base and my audience. Here is who I am. Here is the park that I work out of. Here's the shithole office that I work out of. Oh, you feel more comfortable with people when they're Apple certified? Here is my website from back then. You'll say, look, why Rossman Group's MacBook Repair? This is my website from, I think, 2009. Proud to not be Apple certified. How could this be true? I literally tell people, instead of trying to say, we are Apple certified, you should be customer, I'm going out of my way to tell you that I don't give a fuck about any of this because I value that level of honesty with people.
This kind of a website that he's showing you, this is like a relic of the old internet. And people used to be smarter at this time, and it was better to educate yourself. It was possible to really expand your knowledge with websites like this that were very simple, right? They look more simple, they're not as attractive. But this is kind of the outline-based thinking that really helps you view the world from a perspective where you actually know what's going on. And just to summarize what he's talking about is Google is promoting him if he makes himself less original and more sterile, the way that AI does. And a lot of people use AI now for their prompts, for their creative process, and you're seeing a lot more of those videos. And I haven't sounded the AI alarm. I'm not really the guy who's going to talk all about how dangerous it is. But after seeing it in practice more, what really gets on my nerves is just the way that lack of originality is selected for. It's a complete degradation of human creativity, which is tough for me to handle. But anyway, back to Lewis. He's going to show you some more of his website and how it's really awesome. It's a gem. And it's just a new kind of censorship. They have no reason, no ability to take it down, but they'll take it down by showing it, needle in the haystack. He's going to have to scroll down to the 100th result page, which essentially means that nobody's going to see it. But if he, bends the knee and changes his website to be less honest and less creative, less original, then they will promote it. That's what it's about.
And now my website reads like the exact fucking opposite of this. And that is what's ranking. And it's interesting. I've always thought in the back of my head, having that contrarian perspective and being able to tell people the truth about where I think things are. You're not paying $500 for the screen because it's better. You're paying $500 for the exact same LP133 WX1 TLA1 Apple uses, and my website would go over every model over here, every single model number that we put into your device. I was not bullshitting you. You could Google that and then find it way cheaper yourself than whatever I was billing at the time. All these model numbers, all the stuff was completely honest over here. I was not bullshitting you. I was telling you exactly what model went into every computer. This is not an Apple part. This is an AU Optronics part. This is a Chunghwa part. That's an LG part. This is a different AU Optronics part. And I would tell you what made these things better than the cheaper one. I would put an LP133WX2 into a computer that had a B133EW04. Your black levels are not going to be as good. I'm not going to use an LP133WX2, WX1 TLC1 without flashing the EDID code, because if I don't do that, you're not going to have brightness control in your computer, and that's going to suck. I wanted to be honest with everybody about what I was doing, but I wasn't going to bullshit you about it, right? That's always been my style. And now I'm being told that I need to change things so that my style no longer works. But it's not just my style, because I've had other people write my website that are people that actually have degrees in writing, that have a fucking clue what they're doing when they are writing a page, and they understand better grammar, spelling, everything than I do. Doesn't work. People that are maybe not as adversarial as me, doesn't work. I asked Gemini, rewrite this page so it ranks on Google. and it fucking works. But it doesn't sound like me. It's not something that I'd be proud of. Just to be clear, the changes that...
All right. I'm finding it ironic that it seems to be difficult to just play a video and record me at the same time. I'm hearing little glitches. But back to this whole thing with Gemini, which is Google's AI assistant, and this is basically the thing that allowed him to basically control where his website gets listed. He clearly shows in this video, Lewis does, that they're gatekeeping his stuff. It's pay to play. You have to change the substance of your website in return for us promoting it. So now, as far as to the morality of that, like, let's go back and talk about principles. With Google, no one owns information, right? Everyone's free to publish what they want and research what they want. That's just like a natural principle. So I'm not trying to say that any company like Google has to do what I say they have to do. They don't have to be objective and fair in what they publish. That's kind of where I'm coming at it from. I know the public utility conversation, of course, that Google and Apple, they have a responsibility to give people a fair platform because their business is within a space that cannot be owned by one entity exclusively. And that's true. That's a principle that I agree with. It's just like no one company can own all the air in the world or all the water. It would not be possible. If one person owned all that stuff, nobody else could live, right? That's not right. People have a right to live that requires those things. Life requires those things. And as technology has advanced, it's not that the rights themselves have advanced or that there's some new right to have free internet, but it's the same fundamental right that has just been expanded to cover a new realm, extending to a new field being created, which is the internet. It's the same thing as roads, which is ironic because people always say, without government, who's going to build the roads? So the thing with roads is you can build a road yourself on your own property, and it's your road. You can put up a sign, and other people would not be allowed to travel it, or if you did allow them to travel in it, you would set the terms of it. If you build a road out in the open, though, out in the forest somewhere, or out in the field, or in the city, you would have to allow people to travel it unrestricted because you don't own that area, right? At least that's the principle, that we can do that. We don't actually do that. We don't do it in civilization because only the state is allowed to build a public road. We're not allowed to build roads. So, and then they can set on those roads the speed limits, the terms, the rules of travel, which they do. So they could put cameras on there. The state does that, charges you money for speeding or for not stopping in time before a red light, right? The state, the government does that. And then private companies can profit off of it. That's the way we do things. Same with parking meters, right? Parking meters are not owned by the city usually, but they're owned by some kind of a private company. So the government controls those ownership rights of that land, right? Public land is the government-owned land. They claim the ownership there. So it's not because that they have a natural law claim to that ownership, but just because they control the resources. They control the ability, they have the ability to enforce their rules. And if you can enforce your rules, that basically gives you those rights, not in nature, but in essence, right? In life, de facto. So they control those rights, the government does, and they sell those rights to the private companies, basically, is how it works. And it's the same thing as air travel. You can go fly a drone. Nobody technically owns the air, but the government does control airspace itself. Air travel is actually controlled. The government has a monopoly over it. So you have no ability to build a passenger plane yourself, right? We can't do that. And if you were able to do it, you'd have to register it, right? You'd have to get permission for it, just like with guns. So reasonably, if you want to fly, you can't do it unless you fly with one of the main passenger airlines, the major airlines. And that's where we're at with the internet now. The internet is free in principle, but in reality, the internet has never been free. But 10 years ago, the internet was definitely more free. And 20 years ago, it was a lot more free. I remember 20 years ago how the internet was. But I'm not here to crusade for more laws to get made to control Google or to make society more free. I'm not even really here to motivate people to fight against those systems in the classical way, to protest against it, to take down their systems and fight against the de facto monopolies in society. I'm actually here today and in general to present reality in a certain light. I'm just trying to show you something that shows where we are heading as a people. So my goal is to show you those problems and then the solution that is the most effective to solve those problems. The direction that we're going in as a society is that the gatekeepers of the internet, which is Google, which is Apple, it's YouTube, is that the gatekeepers of the internet are so slowly taking substance out of the public eye. They're taking originality away. Independence, creativity is going away. Taking independence and originality out of the internet. I think the Louis Rossman video shows that very clearly. That is the problem. Is that YouTube and Google has become our school as a people. That is our school. That is our library. That is how today learning and research is done. It's actually the internet. So when AI generated content is selected for and popularized, right? And a guy who has a decades long reputable business, he has to now fight to be selected for by a search engine that just when it was based on merit was showing him on the first page. Now he's on the 10th or 100th page. What that is doing is it's changing the curriculum of our children, so to speak. It's the curriculum of society. So what this actually leads to is changing the character of people in the long term, actually shaping who people are. And character and principles and thoughts and behaviors that affect the actual physical biology of people, like their actual DNA. So people become what their habits are. What they continue to do is what they become like. So they begin to reflect those behaviors in the way they look, in the way they act, right? So what this actually is eugenics. It feels like we've made a leap here from talking about, Google website ranking to talking about eugenics, which is like sterilizing and controlling how people breed and who people are. But that's what this actually is. It's eugenics. You can just breed certain qualities out of existence today without ever touching these people, without ever putting a needle in them or anything like that. All you have to do is control the gatekeepers of society and what those gatekeepers let in and where they point people to. It's not even that they're controlling the access to the gate. It's just what directions they're giving you. Louis Rossman, he had an original contrarian website, very mid-2000s style, maybe 90s style, right before I was on the internet. And it showed people that this industry was using naivete to make money, to exploit people. It was showing them why. So it was giving them free knowledge. Why being Apple certified means nothing. So what does a company like Apple do? What can they do to stop him when the law is not on their side, right? Because they couldn't use the law to take him down or arrest him or send them a cease and desist. Well, they can use their connections in Silicon Valley, their influence in AI and software industry to tilt the tables in their favor, and that's what they did. Long term, these companies, what they've done is they've taken away the people's power to claim and invoke their individual rights, but not by law or decree, not by mandate, but by the type of information that is available to the people. That's the problem. My solution to that problem, very simple, is to focus your efforts on intense, close relationships with people, inspiring people that you could really affect close to you. If you can do it through your online presence, that's great. But chances are you're going to be more effective in person. You're going to have even more of a level playing field in person. Inspiring people to experience life in a passionate and rewarding way. That's really the solution for me. It's kind of a vague thing to say, but it really is about strong emotion, passion for life and appreciation for life. Not just human beings, but all life. Just life itself. I have some of my efforts in the online part of it, in rewiring the internet, right? Trying to make my platform a player on this field so I can be that platform to influence others. still having a voice, even though you're up against it, against the big platforms, against the AI. I wouldn't give up on it. I don't give up on it, but most of my effort is in inspiring others, whether that's through music, through art, through a book I'm going to publish, and through who I spend time with. Inspiring others and being inspired by others. That's where most of my efforts are, and that's a lot more local and focused and a lot less global. Not that you would completely reject one or the other. So if you're someone who relates to what I'm saying, what I have said on here, you need to be on the stage. It's all about being on the stage, right? We have something that we need to perform in front of people and show them, to connect with them, to inspire them, to see the world in a new way, something that they haven't come across before or haven't been compelled by before. So you and I can try to build a stage at the big concert, right? Big stage, big concert, big lights. But chances are, people are not going to go to our stage. There are already too many stages that are taking people's attention. So it's becoming harder and harder to build one as well. Or if you want to build one, like with Louis Rossman, who actually built his stage and just to maintain it, it requires you to look and talk and act a certain way. For example, with that website. So my solution is maybe find a small stage. Maybe you start on the street. You build your own stage. Point a light at yourself, right? You start from where you're at. And also by visiting the small stages, it's who you support. So connect with people then, because that's where we're going to find the talent and the substance these days. It's not going to be in the areas that get the most lights, right? Now, here's what the big stages look like. I'm going to now go to one of those big stages, right? Big platforms. And we're going to listen. We're going to see what they've got. So, this is the TMZ guy. He does a video about the recent immigration shooting with Alex Preddy, who was shot in Minnesota. It's similar to the video that I made about the last one, that was the shooting of Renee Good. And I'm going to talk about him. It may sound like a bit of platform envy, right? Because obviously this is one of those big platforms, but actually I just want to share with you something that is wrong with society. It's nothing really personal against this man. I've seen him several times, a TMZ guy. I recognize him. But I don't know his name, which is just fitting, because nothing against him personally, but I find him to be one of the thousands of people that I've seen online. One of the millions, hundreds of millions of people in the world that I've seen that are personless. They're personality lists. People with nameless personalities and nameless opinions. And I feel comfortable about saying such an offensive thing about this guy, because this guy represents TMZ and has been for a long time. And TMZ is a platform that was made on sniffing the ass of celebrities, following them around, recording them their personal moments, recording their intimate issues, and getting a moment out of them at the airport, squeezing some content out of them. That's what they've done. And art imitates life, but life imitates art also. So when I look at TMZ and these people such as the TMZ journalist, right, air quotes, and people like Mr. Beast and just people who become these big platforms and they get these big audiences, I hold them responsible for influencing people to be more vapid and empty. It's character amputation. It's a self-amputation of originality, of character, and just becoming these big celebrities that are really have no substance. And TMZ is that kind of gossip, empty platform. So I feel very guiltless and free to do the following, which is I'm gonna, to talk a lot of, expose all the things that I just find very negative about this video. My first issue is with the title, what they aren't telling you about Alex Preddy. And it seems like YouTube really likes when you do this, when you title something this way, what they aren't telling you about, what the media didn't tell you about this. And it's been suggested to me, even truth people have resorted to this, even I've resorted to it. And this is the same thing that Louis Rossman was talking about in his video. And when you're trying to make these videos, it's like you got to do the same set of things. You got to make your YouTube shorts. You got to make your videos punchy. You got to upload the same kind of videos. And And that's one of the issues. And well, I don't know when TMZ became a platform that talked about serious things, but apparently they are. So I'm gonna play it, but don't worry, I won't play too much of it. You know, just enough for you to get the taste and get a nice whiff of it. You know. So here we go.
I have a take on what happened between Alex Preddy and the Border Patrol officers. And I have drawn conclusions. But unlike officials in the Trump administration, I drew my conclusions after seeing multiple videos and hearing multiple witnesses. So Greg Bavino, Kristi Noem, and Stephen Miller, the president himself, have made a big deal about the fact that Alex
I know this is
Preddy
quiet.
was
I don't really know
carrying a
why, but
concealed
it's
firearm,
again,
a
it's
loaded
ironic. We don't
concealed
really need to hear him
firearm
too much.
to the protest in Minneapolis. Now, as you all know, he had a permit to legally carry that gun, and that is something that the National Rifle Association said, why is anybody in the administration questioning that? There is a Second Amendment right to lawfully carry a gun, and that's what he did. What no one is talking about, and I think this is the essence of
Here we
this
go. What
whole
no one's
matter,
talking about.
is when the police knew that he was carrying a gun. Now, if they knew early on, before the fatal altercation, that he was carrying this.
So he's pointing out here that the pressing issue for him is that, you know, he was legally carrying a gun, and then he was disarmed, and then he was shot afterwards, so he was not a deadly threat. You know, I'm not really into reinventing the wheel with that statement. That is the obvious conclusion. So he goes on then in this video to point out the lies from the government, and the TMZ guy is defending Alex Preddy, which is low-hanging fruit, right? Because everyone can see that he was killed unprovoked. The guy was murdered. I'm not even going to show the video like I did with Renee Good, and I talked about how that one is a little tough. This one wasn't. This one is cut and dry. Alex Preddy never went for the gun, nor anyone else's gun. You could see him. I mean, what else do you need? He was pepper sprayed. He was getting beat up by 6 guys. He wasn't doing anything that was dangerous. And so the TMZ guy, I agree with him, but I don't respect this guy. And again, this platform was made on sniffing the ass of celebrities, and now I'm supposed to take this guy's measured and dignified comments on national events seriously. Like, I feel like it's just wasting time to making this obvious point. Not very controversial of a point. And the guy talks like Skip Bayless. He's very serious. He goes, it's like Skip Bayless talking about the Cowboys on ESPN, talking about their defense and what roster decisions should be made. Like, it's these guys, and they've got these big platforms now, and people are supposed to take it seriously, what opinion they have to say. And, you know, I realized that I should be more familiar with this guy before making generalizations about his character like that, but I really think it's a safe bet. I think this guy is what he looks like. The issue is that men are just soft. I've said it before, it's nothing new, right? But when it comes to tyranny in the world, it's pretty simple. Boots on the ground, it's always the same procedure. There's able-bodied men carrying out agendas by force. It's always done by force. It's always done by gun at the end of the day, where it matters. So I could give a shit about a hipster's opinions, even if they're right. And that's how I feel about it. Alex Preddy, actually, he carried a gun, and he was willing to physically confront federal agents. The reason he done that is because they were putting hands on someone else. So he was defending a woman, I believe, in that scenario before he was killed. And most people wouldn't. Most people wouldn't do that. People like this will just use it for content, this TMZ guy, and they're going to keep on commenting on things like this without really doing anything about it or showing people any other example, any roadmap, an alternative way to live, or solutions. They're just going to endlessly talk about it and debate it. And the more we have content creators like this guy, like this TMZ guy, I realize I have to go back to him so you could look at him. The more people in real life are going to become commenters. They're going to become know-it-alls, finger pointers, finger wavers, virtual instructors. on topics that they have no real world knowledge of the way it is done by force and in person. And that's how tyranny is always done. And you could talk about principles all day long, but be the kind that is going to be ready to defend it when the time comes for it. So, but instead you get pussies like this who get the spotlight, and the result is whether you support ICE or you fight against ICE, the system is going to win, because even the dissenters, even the rebels who are rebelling against tyranny today, they're going to be people who have mostly no strong qualities. They're going to have no ability. They're going to have either no knowledge, no real world view that is going to have an accurate perception of the world, accurate way to process knowledge in real time, or they're going to have no courage. So either you get people with no balls or no brains. And guys like this, they have neither. That's the way I see it. Alex Preddy likely was the other kind. He had balls. He went out to do what he felt was right. I certainly would put him a lot higher, but I don't think he had a lot of brains. And I'm sorry for being an asshole about it. The man is dead. I didn't even offer my condolences to his family, and I do, of course. But he could have been an amazing guy with great qualities. But as far as worldview and perception, I can almost 100% say that he didn't have my understanding of rights and principles, and what kind of a system we're up against, what life is about. I know how it sounds, and part of that is subjective, and I don't get the final say on things. I'm no professor of this stuff. I'm not 100% right about everything. No one is. But so much of it is clear and objective at this point about what's right and what's wrong in life. And what I say on here is really easy to understand, but it becomes harder every day, because people like Louis Rossman here, they're finding it harder to be who they are. And guys like this TMZ guy, they're finding the system supporting them. It's becoming easier and easier to be the guy like this, and harder to be the guy like this. The guy who built this platform, who became successful in the real world, offering something of substance, and he was confident enough in what he offered that he actually empowered the people for free. So he showed his hand, he called his shot, and then he did it. And he made the world a better place as a result. That is the exact opposite of what the big platforms are doing. And before the internet, it was easier to tell the difference. Now it is much harder to tell the difference, what kind of a person you're listening to. People have become confused on what it means to have a big platform and what it means to have real world respect and power. That's my message. It's not really about the shootings that go down, or the AI bullshit, or the tyrannical laws that I go and talk about all the time. It's really about your character and the way you live your life. That's the takeaway. And full disclosure, today I stayed home from work because of the effects of me celebrating my birthday this weekend. It's true, not proud of it. So I'm not preaching to you saying that I'm the most solid character person ever. I'm not preaching to you acting like I'm holy, but I'm certainly not hiding from my choices either. Nor am I turning away from the path of living in a healthy, disciplined way. That's still my path. I got nothing to hide from. So that's why I don't have the table under it. I'm not gonna act all buttoned up and professional. I'm just being real. So the internet is full of crazy people with skeletons in the closet that act like they're perfect for the camera. I'm not acting like I'm perfect. I'm a real world person telling real things. And at the end of the day, life is a drama. It's a journey. It's a crazy, beautiful journey toward living a healthy, fulfilling life in reality, not virtually. It's not a movie. It's real life. So, you decide for yourself. Draw your own conclusions. Cheers to everyone, and thank you. I'll see you next week on This Week in Tyranny.